And then, of course, there's Damon. And I never can figure out what to say about Damon because he's, I like to play around, have fun with him, but then I guess I need to get serious. But I'll just say this. It's probably been 10 years now. It's got to be close to that. I went to speak in a gathering. Damon was there. He had been asking the Lord to connect him with a father that he felt like could really understand him, because Damon Thompson has a very unique ministry, and he's out there on the edge because of his evangelistic calling. He's very radical in his zeal and his passion, and he just said, Lord, there's got to be a father that could understand who I really am. And somebody gave him a set of messages by me, and Damon, I guess if I don't get this right, you can correct me, but listened to those and said, Lord, I think that's the guy. And he said, I don't know how you're going to do it, but would you please put him in my life? And when I went to speak at this meeting, I didn't really know Damon, and I've never done this before or since. But I stopped in the middle of my message, and I said, I don't know you, but I'm going to know you, and we're going to run together. And he fell out of his seat and began to weep, and I thought, well, I don't know what happened, but I guess this is okay. We've been running together ever since, and we're going to keep running together. One of the great joys of my life has been my relationship with this man. So just go ahead and welcome him, Damon Thompson, one of my best friends and one of my sons. I love you too, buddy.
Just remain standing for just a second, if you will. I feel like several times in worship throughout this day that we've been 24 hours or so that we've been here, I feel like several times in worship we bumped up against an opportunity for the platform noise to kind of become irrelevant and for the real sound to begin to come out of you. And I'm learning in a great move of the Spirit, I'm actually learning that it's the sound He prefers. So I want you just no hype, no fanfare, just lift your hands, and when you do, just begin to lift your voice with a sound of worship to Him all over the room. Would you do that? See it? That's it. Just take that up a little higher now, just a little higher. Come on, this is where you start getting into some unfamiliar territory. Come on, one notch higher, just one notch higher. Let's go. Come on now, just celebrate him, just celebrate him. Just go ahead and celebrate him all over the room. If you're watching us by live stream, don't spectate, participate. Go ahead and celebrate him. Celebrate him like America is making her turn. Come on, celebrate him like a nation is making the biggest turn in her history. Jesus! Let me ask you a question. How are you going to act the day we overturn Roe versus Wade? Well, let me tell you something. Faith is not going to wait for it to be seen in the natural to believe it's already happened. So let's act that way right now because we know he's turning it around. Come on. Come on, prayer just got back in school. How are you going to celebrate? Woo! The sex trade just got demolished. How are you going to act? Your prodigal sons and daughters just came home. Come on. Some of you would get real excited if the person you want to get in the White House gets there, but I'm telling you, you're aiming at the wrong thing. That's a good pursuit, but it's an inferior one. Because the answer for America is not in a politician. The answer for America is on earth as it is in heaven. Come on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. You can be seated tonight. So honored to be here, Dutch, and all of you guys, the team. I've got a spiritual son that, and he gets together. We had him eat one night. Dutch was in town speaking. We had him stay and eat with us, and he said he felt like the little kid at the big kid table. You know that deal at Thanksgiving, the kids are at the card table and the adults are at the big table. I feel like the big kid at the little kid at the big kid table all weekend long. So really excited to be here. I don't come out of the woods very much to come out in public anymore. And so, but I am here tonight, and I do feel like I have something from heaven for you. So I want you to go with me to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12, and I'm going to get there in just a moment. But I want to talk to you a little bit about what this evergreen thing means to me. Blessed is the man who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in that law does he meditate day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by rivers of living water that brings forth fruit, not in its season. It's a poor translation. That brings forth fruit in every season, and his leaf never withers. I believe that what we're moving into, even as it relates to the evergreen tree, the appeal to heaven, the flag, I believe what it's moving us into is it's moving us into permission to stop living subject to seasons. Seasons are a seasons are a violation of a superior dimension. It's illegal to pray for on earth as it is in heaven and remain subject to seasons. because in heaven there are none. He does not move from winter to spring to summer to fall. He only moves from glory to glory to glory to glory. And I believe one of the reasons the Lord is putting this evergreen tree in front of us is because there is a position called planted that moves you into a place where the leaf never withers. It doesn't mean you won't have cold spells. It just means it'll never cost you fruit again. And in South Carolina, in this move God's had us in for about 18 months there, we've been declaring that we have discovered the gate of the never-ending encounter. And at the gate of the never-ending encounter is a posture called never withering leaf. Jesus comes to a fig tree. It has no figs on it. The Bible said it wasn't the season for it to have figs on it. And he rebukes it for not having figs on it when it was not supposed to have figs on it seasonally. Bill Johnson has a great thought on that. Bill Johnson's thought is if the fig tree would have had fruit, it would have been supernatural. So Jesus rebukes the fig tree for not having supernatural fruit. Good thought. I've got another thought. I believe he rebuked the fig tree for remaining subject to seasons in that high degree of presence. There's a degree of presence coming, and you cannot blame your circumstances on your absence of fruit. There's a degree of presence now beginning to be experienced in the earth, and you will not be able to say, well, my pastor doesn't welcome revival, so I'm not in it. Or the wrong guy's in the White House, so I'm not in it. There's a degree of presence coming to rewrite the rules. And in the degree of presence that God's giving us, the leaf never withers. I want to say this to you, and I think this is an interesting thought that can help us tonight. And I'm going to jump into Genesis chapter 12. An interesting thought that can really help us. Whew. Why do we celebrate Christmas? Nothing happened at Christmas. No crucifixion, no burial, no resurrection. Why do we make such a big deal out of Christmas? Other than it's commercialized and it's materialism. Why do we make such a big deal out of Christmas? Because we have a revelation that the arrival of his presence is always an announcement that an intervention is inevitable. So we celebrate that he was born, even though nobody was born again because he was born. But we have to celebrate when he shows up, because he never shows up without the heart to bring intervention. Jesus meets a woman in Luke 7 who's in a nasty situation. Husband's dead. Now only son is dead at the funeral of her only son. And before he does anything to change her natural situation, he tells her not to weep. The boy's still dead. She's in the coffin. She's on the way to the funeral. And he says to her, do not weep. If anybody in Scripture had a right to be crying, it's the lady who just lost her husband, now lost her son, and is at the funeral of her only child. And Jesus tells her not to weep. It would have made sense if he had told her to stop weeping after he resurrected the son, but he tells her before, because he intends for faith to respond to the arrival of presence that announces intervention. And some of us, because we do not understand the arena, dimension, or currency of faith, are waiting for things to turn out the way we want them to before we move into the arena of celebration that could actually birth a higher degree of transformation. Anybody can celebrate it when it's all done. We are being called to live now like we believe the turnaround is inevitable. And I'm telling you, some of you have had a front row seat to the direction this nation's been going for a long, long time. And now that presence is starting to come, you do not have the appropriate degree of hope. We didn't come in here for 2 days to throw Hail Marys. If I did not believe the inevitable turn was coming to America, I would have just stayed at home where I was. I believe a gathering like this is to reinforce faith on the inside of you to believe he's not just showing up so the hair can stand up on the back of my neck and I can get slain in the spirit 3 more times at an altar. This is about a nation turning. Amen. Genesis chapter 12. I like audience participation, so feel free to talk back. I talk fast, and I'm going to be up here a while. I don't even want you to think it's going to be short. Genesis chapter 12, beginning in verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, say Abram. The Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, from your father's house, and I'll make you a great nation. I'll bless you. I'll make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you. I'll curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Verse 5, then Abram took Sarah his wife and Lot his brother's son and all their possessions that they had gathered and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to go to the land of Canaan. Say Canaan. Come on, say Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Say Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites, say Canaanites, were there in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, take your descendants, I'll give you this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord. Say altar. He built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him, verse 8, and he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. I want to talk to you a little bit tonight briefly about Canaan. Before Canaan was a land, Canaan was a family. Before Canaan was a family, Canaan was a man. A man named Canaan had a father named Ham, who had a father named Noah. Noah had been on the boat with animals and crazy relatives, gets off the boat and plants a vineyard. Salah. He'd been on the boat with animals and crazy relatives and got off the boat and planted a vineyard. Had some wine from the vineyard, got drunk off the wine from the vineyard, and is laying in his tent with no clothes on. His son named Ham comes into the tent. The Bible said he sees his father's nakedness, goes out and gets his brothers Shem and Japheth, and brings them in to see their father's nakedness. However, Shem and Japheth, because they have honor, back into the tent and actually cover their father's nakedness. And we know that this is an idiom for honor within spiritual authority, and all that's true and right. But there's something we miss if we don't look a little closer at these words. The word saw, when it says Ham saw his father, it's ruah, and it means to stare intently as with desire. Ham does not just look at his father's nakedness, he ponders his father's nakedness. And when Noah wakes up and finds out what Ham did, he says, cursed be Canaan. Uh-oh. Canaan didn't do anything. But because Ham did not know how to deal with the perversion in his own life, his compromise became Canaan's captivity. One generation's compromise will always become the next generation's captivity. Hello? One generation's compromise. Whatever I'm allowing in my life in moderation, my children will deal with in excess. He stares intently as with desire, his father's nakedness. He begins to birth something that will last all the way into Sodom and Gomorrah, which if I had time, I could prove to you was in the lot of the region that Ham would have inherited when Noah split the earth into thirds and gave it to Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Because of Ham's perversion, a curse falls on Canaan. God finally finds a covenant man full of faith, a patriarch named Abram. And where's the first place God sends Abram? To Canaan. Canaan is currently known as the Promised Land. But before it was the Promised Land, it was the land under the government of a cursed son. Hello? And we think of Canaan now, what do we think? Land flowing with milk and honey. The land of promise. But before it was a land of promise, it was a land under a curse, and God was looking for a covenant man that had the authority to go reverse the curse. Instead of looking at the curse, locking ourselves in our churches and seeing how many people we can gather around and insulate from the curse. If you have no interest in invading the darkness, it was wasteful to give you a light. It's not so you can make sure your light's bigger than the church down the road's light and we can have a light comparison contest. I sent my children to a nominal Christian daycare. Can you imagine this? Nominal Christian preschool. And they came home singing one of the worst songs I've ever heard. It went like this. This little light of mine. It's one of the worst songs I've ever heard. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Not going to let the devil put it out. If you've got one that can be put out with, you didn't get the right one. And this is what we do. We spend our lives building structure around our little flame. Do you know that the wind that distinguishes the inferior flame actually strengthens the superior one? So the same substance that can put a fire out when it's in a minuscule state is actually the most dangerous thing to the spread of the fire in maturity. So what the wind teaches you is what degree you're burning at. The same substance that melts wax hardens clay. Because what you're going through is revealing to you what you're made of. In theology, we teach something called the law of relatable dimensions. It's where we get the concept of deep crying out to deep. What is relevant about deep crying out to deep? If shallow speaks to you, it communicates to you you're shallow. Y'all are quiet. I'm not used to this many white people in a room. This is bothering me a little bit. I have to bring some people with me next time that are under the age of 157. Come on. Come on. Come on, wake up tonight. Let's get this. Brother, there's just, the storms are blowing. Awesome. The wind is blowing. Everywhere we look, it's just the wind, the devil. Why are you so conscious of somebody that has zero authority to distinguish your flame? Come on. Come on. Just build it hot enough that when the wind blows, it becomes a wildfire instead of a campfire. Shem and Japheth cover. Noah wakes up, says, "Cursed be Canaan." And the first thing God says to Abram is, "Go to Canaan." I want to say to you tonight that no greater compliment has ever been paid to a generation of Americans than for God to trust this generation with the nation at this state. Let me say this again. No greater compliment has ever been paid to a generation than for God to step back and say, there's one generation that can handle this mess, and they're on the earth right now. Often we've said, if Mark said 4% of his generation are Christian, people said, how can that not be depressing? I said, because I've seen the 4%. I'm not depressed because it would take 1,000 of another generation to find the fire I'm finding in a handful. Come on. You know what they want to do? You know what they want to do? They want to build their personal kingdom ministries so they can get jets and Bentleys. They want to empty out cancer wards in hospitals. Come on. They want to go to college campuses and birth reformations. They're not trying to see how big and famous they can get. Cursed be Canaan. Do we just leave it that way? Pray for the rapture? It's irresponsible to take our responsibilities and push them over into a dimension for which we have no responsibility. We take so many verses that are meant to be about now and make them about heaven. But there is an issue. The prayer says, on earth as it is in heaven. All right? So he goes back into Canaan. God purposefully sends him to Canaan. Interestingly, doesn't immediately tell him he's going to Canaan. He said, just start walking and I'll reveal where I'm taking you after you walk. Because you have to walk a little while not to be intimidated about where he's sending you. When he says yes to the assignment, God changes his name to Abra. God didn't just change his name, he gave him back what Ham forfeited. Whatever has been forfeited is still available. God's just looking for a covenant man that can be qualified to receive back that's been forfeited. Abra. So if Ham's perversion cost a generation, then Abram's righteousness can birth a generation. Come on. Some things here I just think the Lord wants me to share with you, and I'm gonna cover this quickly, but I find this to be so interesting. Abram, in the process of becoming Abraham, goes through three phases. First, faith responding, which we just read about. If you go down a little further in chapter 12, you'll see faith retreating. And then if you go into chapter 13, maybe we'll make it there tonight, you'll see faith reviving. So we have faith responding, faith retreating, and ultimately faith reviving. And I think it's becoming a picture of where the Lord has us nationally. I was on a prayer retreat for 3 days back at the end of July, and the Lord spoke to me and said, you do not know me as kinsman redeemer. He said to me, you do not know me as kinsman redeemer. And I said, you're exactly right. I've heard that terminology. I've heard that phrase. I understand a little of Ruth and Boaz, but no, I do not understand you as kinsman redeemer. And the Lord sent me on a study that brought me to 5 defining marks of a kinsman redeemer. These are 5 in order responsibilities of the kinsman redeemer. Number 1 obligation of a kinsman redeemer is to redeem the land. You can find that in Leviticus 25 through 28, prophetically seen in Jeremiah 32, 6 through 9. First obligation, redeem the land. Second obligation, redeem the enslaved. That's Leviticus 25, 47 through 55. Third obligation is to provide an heir. To provide an heir. That's Genesis 38, 8 through 10. Deuteronomy 25, 5 through 10. And Matthew 22, 23 through 28. Fourth responsibility of the kinsman redeemer is to avenge death. To avenge death. Numbers 35, 16 through 21. Fifth responsibility of the kinsman redeemer is to become a trustee, which practically means key holder. So again, obligation is to redeem the land. Second obligation is to redeem the enslaved. Third obligation to provide an heir. Fourth obligation to avenge death. And fifth obligation to become a trustee. I want to talk to you a little while tonight about this concept of redeeming the land, because I think we went after the enslaved out of order. That some of what we've done in the past in evangelism did not produce the long-term hope for results, because we were taking people out of one bondage and putting them into what is possibly a superior bondage of religion. I sat down for 4 hours a few weeks ago with the president of the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and we began to prophesy back and forth to one another. And he looked at me and he said, We can go back now and look at the millions that we won into Christianity through Billy Graham evangelistic crusades and say it never had the impact it should have had because we brought them into a church without revival. You're talking about the most respected, successful, evangelistic voice in the history of a nation standing and saying, if we had it to do over again, we would have put more of our energy and resources into seeing the local church in revival instead of just seeing people saved in stadiums. I think wisdom would listen to that. First obligation is to redeem the land. The first obligation of the kinsman redeemer is to redeem the land. This thing of it redeeming the enslaved is incredible. It's an incredible responsibility. It's actually the fun part. But if we cannot bring liberated people into a land called free indeed, they'll ultimately, that's why we are teaching so many people to manage sin. We introduced them to a 12-step program. Thank God for that. Whatever works, works. Jesus had a 1-step program. Out of darkness into marvelous light. I'm in darkness, marvelous light. There's no darkness. The demoniac gets delivered in Gadarene, naked in a graveyard, cutting himself with rocks, can be held by no chain, full of a legion of demons, gets delivered, asks Jesus if he could follow him, and Jesus says, no, you stay here. And I want to help Jesus to understand that if any dude in the Bible needed a little extra attention, this cat is 2,000 ways of screwed up. And Jesus said, no, you stay here as the apostolic leader of a region that just ran me off because they liked you bound better than they liked you free. He said, I want to go with you. Jesus said, no, you stay here. Why? Because he trusted the degree of encounter. Because we are not offering people a high enough degree of encounter, we are having to manage their intellectual ascent because they've not gone through supernatural transformation. And let me tell you something, if you get them saved right here, you'll fight to keep them for the rest of their life. But if they ever get a fire down in here, the woman at the well, I mean, come on, Jesus. Don't send her back to the men. Do you know what the Bible said? She went back to the men of the city. We would say, listen, ma'am, if there's one group of people you need to avoid, it's men. You get around a group of strong women, preferably holiness women, in blue jean skirts with their hair up in a bun who don't wear makeup. That's where you really need a different influence. Unless the transformation is so deep that she can go right back into the place of her biggest mistakes. Do you see the disciples that go out to get food and then they come back and here's Jesus having a one-on-one with this chick? This one, you bring your wife into the counseling session and leave the door open. Not Jesus. Why? Because he trusted the degree of his infection was higher than the degree of hers. And he knew if me and her get along, there ain't a chance in hell I'm going to catch what she has. And there ain't a chance in hell she's going to be able to resist catching what I have. Maybe our movements are not going viral because they're inoculations instead of infections. Let me say it again. Maybe our movements are not going viral because they're inoculations instead of infections. You understand an inoculation? We actually give you the flu to keep you from getting the flu. We give you just enough of something to keep you from catching the real thing. See, they got it, and then they got it, and then they got it. Live stream people just got it. I heard them shout all the way from back home. Give you just enough of something to keep you from getting the real thing. Contemporary worship. Unless you prefer the traditional, then we can be a chameleon and give you both. We want to make sure that we present a Christianity that is acceptable to the masses. So with that, we eliminate at worst, downplay at best, any unusual manifestation of the Spirit. However, when you study the Old Testament, you find something extraordinary. You find that the best mystery ever hidden in the Old Testament is the church. We knew that Jesus was coming. Thank you, buddy. Look nice tonight, Jeremy. We knew that Jesus was coming. We knew where Jesus was coming. We knew he was going to be born of a virgin. We knew all of that, right? But this mystery of the church is this bride mystery is hidden. You have to really dig to discern bride revelation. And when God gets ready to unveil this secret that he had kept for the ages, I'm finally going to show the world the church. Here it is. This is my plan all along. This is why he's the lamb that was slain before the foundation of the world. Here comes the ecclesia crashing onto the scene. How should we do this? How should we do it? How should we just do donuts? So coffee, 45-minute service, pick the most eloquent speaker who has the fewest mistakes in his past, or at least has learned to pretend he has the fewest mistakes in his past. And he says, no, let's do this. I had this mystery. Let's reveal them like drunk men. And maybe people will know the power does not rest in them. The power rests in him. Inoculated. You know, your fruit that we're called apostolically to judge in the life of the believer was not just your gift. It was the degree of your influence. And I want to say to you, sitting in that chair, living off of Elijah's list and coffee, that if there's not something evangelistic stirring down on the inside of you, then I have a right to question whether what you have is a fad or a viral infection of the Holy Ghost. I see something coming that is going to draw a line of distinction between the people who got a little bit and the people who got the whole thing. Redeem the land. Redeem the land. Redemption of land's beautifully displayed in the book of Ruth with Boaz as the kinsman redeemer. Kinsman redeemer in Hebrew, Goel. It's a beautiful picture of Boaz marrying an impoverished Ruth after the death of her husband, and Naomi, her mother-in-law, suffering the death of her husband and both sons. You know the story. Naomi is getting ready to go back from Moab. Ruth is a Moabite. She says, if you're leaving, I'm leaving, because I watched you go through pain and determined your ability to go through pain with grace made you worth following. She goes through great pain. She gets to the field of a relative named Boaz, sends Ruth into the field to glean, to take from the edges what spills in the process of harvest. Come on, let me say this. To take from the edges what spills in the process of harvest. However, God has a greater plan. The plan is that instead of you being a gleaner on the edges, you marry the man who owns the field. Some of you literally came here with no agenda except to get some more seeds to put in your pocket. I saw it happen when the violin started to play this afternoon. And people start going, well, so what are they going to teach? We got an entire generation with a pocket full of seeds and no fruit. Chasing nuggets. Chasing truth they really have no heart to apply. You don't believe it? Let a pastor come preach the same sermon 4 weeks in a row in his church and see how it affects his attendance. Do you understand? You understand the purpose of repetition? The purpose of repetition is reinforcement, because we're not supposed to be able to simply repeat it. We're supposed to be able to reproduce it. You have an adversary that knows it, can repeat it, and believes it, but it's illegal for him to reproduce it. One day on the edges of the fields while she's cleaning, Ruth catches the eyes of the one who owns the field. And in catching the eyes of the one who owns the field, she has an opportunity through covenant to move into intimacy, which would then make her an owner in the middle of what she was a gleaner on the edges of. This is why God in South Carolina has showed us two sides of a ladder. One side's honor, the other side is devotion. And when you ascend with honor and devotion, you can't help but inherit influence. The problem is we're trying to get through influence while bypassing both honor and devotion. It's the people who come to meetings and hand out their cards. Try to get their face out there. Live on Facebook and Twitter and Periscope and Instagram and Snapchat. But let me tell you, if you were really on fire, you'd be trying to hide, not trying to get noticed. I know that's not going to go over good, because social media is going to be an indictment against an entire generation when they stand before God and say they had no time to pray. You got 2 hours a day to scroll through pictures of people that are not your friends, or you would know what their children look like. I'm going to preach it anyway. It's my last night, so I'm going to hit and run. That same generation will come to church and tell me they're bored. Well, I'm bored. No, you're boring. And you're so boring that when something real starts to happen, you cannot discern the difference between the world that has mused you to sleep and the one where God's birthing a revolution. Does anybody tonight in Alabama believe God's birthing a revolution? Ruth gets intimate with the one who owns the field, cuts covenant with the one who owns the field. Boaz and Ruth are intimate. Ruth is now not a gleaner on the edges. She's an owner in the middle. Now that she's an owner in the middle, she's qualified for reproduction. Now that she's qualified for reproduction, they have a son by the name of Obed, who has a son by the name of Jesse, who has a son by the name of David. Let me teach you how the beloved gets born. David's name, Dahavid, means the beloved. We talk about the key of David, and yes, it's because he's a king. And yes, it's because he's a priest, but it's also because he's willing to stand in a field with a bunch of dirty sheep and play his harp until he becomes the apple of the Father's eye. Some of you really want to be a king and you really want to be a priest, and you have no idea how to stand still in a field with a harp. You got giant slaying on your mind. And you don't have enough trophies of bears and lions where nobody was watching. Ruth and Boaz have a son named Obed. Obed has a son named Jesse. Jesse has a son named David. Ready? According to Hebraic agricultural tradition, which is really more than tradition, it's actually law, 4 generations would be allowed, watch this, to row crop a piece of land until it had the law be rotated into pasture land. So scholars believe that the field that David was standing in when the oil wouldn't flow on Eliab, playing his harp, worshiping God, was the field that his great-grandmother was gleaning in, who decided, I'm tired of being a gleaner and I want to marry the man who owns the field. Is anybody here tonight tired of being a gleaner and would like to marry the man who owns the field? How important is a piece of land? How important is a piece of dirt? Redeem the land. Why redeem the land? Because God is going to make selection out of the very place where another generation cut covenant and said yes to intimacy. I'm very, very, very stirred to be standing in this pulpit in this building. It may not be that big a deal to you. It's a really big deal to me. To know the pair of hands that grip this pulpit that we're standing behind, that helped father a revival that is responsible for many of you going after God right now the way that you're going after God right now. Can anybody testify? One of the reasons I'm going after God like I am right now is a revival in Pensacola, Florida that transformed churches all over the world. How important is a piece of dirt? Don't ever say it's just a building. Incorrect. I don't walk into my Father's house in the natural and say it's just a house. I don't go eat lunch with Dutch Sheets and say it's just lunch. I drove Tim Sheets over here, and it wasn't just driving Tim Sheets over here. I'm looking for a generation, and I don't mean age specific when I say generation. I'm looking for a generation to come out of the selfishness that says, I'm getting fed fine over here on the edge. Not connected to anything, not giving into anything, not serving anything, not helping promote anything, not helping share the weight of anything. I know that one. I know nobody would shout over that one. To say, you know what, I'd like to own this. So instead of a handful of intercessors carrying a nation, maybe some 20-year-olds that think they're worshipers but actually just like music. I meant to be completely nice tonight, and I'm just... You know why I know they love music instead of worship? Because if you eliminate the music, they have no idea how to worship. But they're tired of living on the edges, hoping something falls on them. Do you know why? Do you know why the tree planted by the river is always green? Because its roots have gone deep enough that it lives off of something that flows, not falls. We keep waiting for revival to fall. We'll sing about send it on down. Why? We love that because now there's no responsibility on us. If we're not in it, it's because He didn't send it. But when you find the river and you get planted beside it and you let your roots go deep enough, you live off of what flows instead of what falls. There's a field that a man named David's playing a harp in, that his great-grandmother used to glean in until she married. His great-grandfather had a son named Obed, who had a son named Jesse, who had a son named David. How important is one little piece of dirt around Bethlehem? I'll tell you how important it is. One day shepherds are abiding in a field outside of the city of Bethlehem that scholars have suggested was the exact same field that David was playing a harp in, that was the exact same field that Ruth was gleaning in. And when they got ready to announce that the Messiah had been born, they didn't just look for the right group of people, they looked for the right spot where covenant had been cut. Come on, he's going to do it again. He's going to do it again. He's going to do it again. It's just a piece of dirt. It's not just a piece of dirt. If you don't leave the edges and get in the center, then there's a king that's got to be born that's not going to get born. Where's he going to make the next announcement of messianic intervention? He's going to find a place where there's some history. He's not going to pick, I'm going to say, I'll make you mad, but you'll be okay. He's not going to pick your church because a prophet told him he would. That prophet told everybody that. I'm sure they have, but I've witnessed very few prophets who walk in and say, I don't feel nothing here. The Lord showed me he's not going to use your church at all. He's actually going to use that one over there to win the city. That's Bible prophets. That's not, let me see how much money I can get out of you tonight, prophets. Hallelujah. I want you to look at Genesis 12 one more time. I'll start wrapping this up. Maybe. Whew. So God tells him go to Canaan, right? Goes to Canaan. What's the first thing he finds when he gets to Canaan that is under the government of a curse because of the misbehavior of a father? Goes to Canaan, watch verse 10. Now there was a famine in the land. See, this was the problem. We somehow bought into a theology that said he'll always send us somewhere where there's plenty. And sometimes the greatest compliment he can pay you is to send you into a curse in a famine and say, if anybody can handle it, that group can. I know Dutch was born for this America. I know it. I know it as sure as you're sitting here and I'm standing here. This man was born for this America, and God's put a team of people around him that are looking at him and saying, if you tell us to redeem the land, we'll go fight for every square inch of it. And I don't know, I don't care if there's 75,000. I don't really, whatever. I thank God that you're giving him 15, but the people that'll change the world will be the ones that give him everything. And I think everybody in the room ought to give him 15. Because his synergy, because his connection in prayer, hear me. But I'm telling you, the ones that are going to birth a reformation are not the ones who want to know where their seat is on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time when the show starts. It's going to be the people who said, I'm going to own this thing. If I'm going to be an American, then I'm going to own this thing. And instead of backing down and hiding in my building because there's a curse, I'm going to get a company of people and we're going to go right into the teeth of the curse to turn it around. So I live in the middle of nowhere. That's not an exaggeration. I live in the middle of nowhere in South Carolina. I live between two cities with 3,500 people each. That's where we go to town. That's where Ma saddles up the horse and buggy and we go to town. One of the cities where my address is, where our church has its primary assignment in South Carolina, was just covered on the front page of the newspaper, not the church, the city. because something supernatural happened in the city in the last year. And they did a whole front page report on it because the crime rate in our city fell, watch this, by 50% in 1 year. Hear what I'm about to say to you. The normal fluctuation in crime rate is between 2 and 4% annually. The highest recorded fluctuation in crime rate is 11% over a 12-month period of time. Our crime rate in our city fell 50%. It went, listen, this is what the paper said. It went from being one of the more crime-riddled cities in the state of South Carolina to now being the 7th safest city in the entire state of South Carolina. How important is a piece of dirt to God? I don't want to have good meetings. I've been to plenty of good meetings. I've been to some real bad ones too. I've been to plenty of good meetings. People got slain in the spirit, which I love. Happened to me this morning. Hallelujah. Doesn't happen to me very often, but happened to me today. I love it. We've got manifestations happening all over our church right now that are making me ask theological questions. Like, can you do that? We got people being called in encounters. We got people shaking and can't stop shaking 3 days later. We had a deaf lady healed through the live stream, using closed captions to read, and all of a sudden started to hear. What if this thing wasn't about us getting prophesied to again? What if we quit the palm reading? What if you said, I want to be an owner in the middle instead of a gleaner on the edges? We now live in the 7th safest city in our state. We have some interesting cities in our state. Frankly, a lot different than the ones you have in Alabama. And I'm from here originally. We have Charleston. We have Mount Pleasant. We have Isle of Palms. We have Pawleys Island. We have cities in South Carolina along the coast and in the mountains that the median home price is $1.2 million. That ain't the one I live in. But the one that I live in is now ranked among those other cities because a group of people did not say, how can we get together and get the crime rate down? A group of people got together and said, let's aim at the glory of God and see if His glory will not cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. Come on, until the kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of our God and His Christ. Verse 10 again, quickly. There was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to dwell there. For the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass, when he was close to entering Egypt, that he said to Sarah his wife, indeed, I know that you're a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore, it will happen when the Egyptians see you, that they will say, this is his wife. They'll kill me, but they'll let you live. Please say you're my sister. You talked about this last night. Please say that you're my sister, which keeps association but precludes intimacy. This is what manipulation does. It'll let you still have relationship, but you'll never be able to have intimacy. It's not that I want you out of the family, it's just I want you to lose your bride status. Let me move on. That's another thought for another day. Please say you're my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, that I may live because of you. So it was when Abram came into Egypt that the Egyptians saw the woman, that she was very beautiful. The princes of Pharaoh also saw her, committed her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. Treated Abram well for her sake. He had sheep, oxen, male donkeys, female servants, female donkeys, and camels But the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why do you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister? I might have taken her as my wife. Now therefore, here is your wife. Take her and go your way." So Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him. They sent him and his wife away and all that he had. I want you to back up quickly to verse 16. He treated Abram well. For her sake, he being Abram, sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male and female servants, female donkeys, and camels. I think it's a picture of the deal the enemy's cut with the current establishment of the church. If you'll trade in your bride status, if you'll trade your intimacy, if you'll trade your devotion, if you'll negotiate, I'll let you stay in the family and you'll get lots of stuff. And I'm telling you, it has played absolute havoc with insecure leaders without fathers who have now fallen under the illegal measuring rod of success. Should never judge success based on how many people you have in a building, but based upon the degree of glory that's manifesting within the culture. And I want to give an entire generation of leaders permission to live according to a new standard of success. Anybody can fill a building. I want you to watch what happens in this. This is very interesting to me. Abram gets to where God sends him. Abram gets to where God sends him and finds out there's a famine there. And because he's not operating in the degree of necessary faith to believe God sent him there in the famine so that simply the degree of transformation would be undeniable. I'm actually not, and you guys correct this, I'm not really upset over where we are. There's some days that freak me out, but I don't watch the news very much. So I'm actually looking at some of the darkness going on in the culture, and I know I shouldn't say this, but this is what I'm going. I'm like, this is perfect. Obamacare, oh my God. Well, maybe it means we're going to have to learn to heal them. Drugs are going to be too expensive. Well, maybe we can quit being so dependent on narcotics to ease the pain, and maybe somebody can believe the works that he did and greater works we're going to do. Come on. Abram steps from the faith principle into self-management. When this happens, here's my assessment of the results. We become busy, sensible, reasonable, and practical again. Now, Damon, not everybody's going to be like you, you know. Jesus, I hope not. But I want to say this to you. Oftentimes your misconceptions about your personality keep you from the inheritance of your identity. Y'all can jump up and down, you can wave your hands, and that's y'all's personality and everything, but I'm more cerebral, you know. I'm going to sit and analyze, and that's just the way God made me. But he said, clap your hands all. And then it shout. And I keep waiting for that verse that says, unless you're an introvert. Clap your hands, all you people, shouting together. Well, that's just not really how we do it. But that's what it says. And how arrogant is it for you to assume you know how you're made better than the architect that designed you? Maybe he's telling you to clap your hands and shout because he knows there's something in you that cannot wake up any other way. Come on, I'm ready to redeem the land tonight. I'm ready to storm some gates. Faith responding. God said, go, leave your family, get away from everything you know, and I'm not even telling you where you're going. And Abram said, let's do it. Gets to where God sends him, finds out there's a famine there, and says, uh-oh. Not a famine. Oh my God. A Democrat in the White House. Oh my God. Oh Lord. Well, let's all get together and hold hands, get in a circle. The rapture must be about to happen. Okay. Do you know in the book of Revelations there's a whore and there's a bride? And you can't study one to determine when he's coming back. Everybody's saying he's about to return are experts at studying the whore. And apparently have not assessed the condition of the bride. But he said he's coming back for a bride that is without spot, wrinkle, or blemish. Come on. I believe what God's doing is he's resurrecting the bride nature in the infected ones. He's fixing to come back. He's fixing to come back. Your church is racist. He ain't coming back for that one. Full of bigotry. Full of materialism, full of sexual immorality, leaders addicted to pornography. Oh yeah, the whore's kicking it. She is doing it well. We fed her and she moved from a serpent in the garden to a dragon by the book of Revelation. Started as a serpent, ended up as a dragon. Somebody's been feeding that thing. We're all reading our books and getting together and watching our TV and listening to our end time prophecy people, and we're going, oh, this is it. The end is coming because of ISIS. I believe we're going to know the end is nearing based on whose shadow falls on the sick and they get up and walk. Come on, I believe there's another sign of where we are, and the most exciting thing I've seen is a generation beginning to rise up in the church that are done with living on the edges. They want to live in the middle. What's the cure? I'm closing. What's the cure? Faith responds, we're going to Canaan. Steps of a good man are ordered of the Lord. We know, believe that, right? Go to Canaan. Steps of a good man are ordered of the Lord. Anybody believe steps of a good man are ordered of the Lord? Do you know steps go this way too? And if the steps only go this way, nobody would ever need to tell you they're ordered of the Lord. Because we love the ascending staircase. But the ones where you need the verse that promised you he ordered them is when they go like, I must decrease. What's the cure? Faith responding, I'm going to Canaan. Don't care, you tell me where to go, I'll go. It's a curse, it's named after a man in a curse. The man who the curse was called upon was called that because of the perversion of his father. Under the lot of Ham's inheritance is Sodom and Gomorrah. You want to find out what wicked looks like? Check that one out. Hear me? What's the cure? Faith responding to faith retreating. There's a famine in the land. He goes down to Egypt. He negotiates the intimacy of the bride out of his own life. God actually has to bring breakthrough through Pharaoh's revelation, not Abram's. Come on, man. What's the cure? Faith responding, faith retreating. Look at Genesis 13. Quickly, let me share this with you. Genesis chapter 13, verse 1. Say faith reviving. Then Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him to the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, silver, and gold. Went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning. To the place where his tent had been at the beginning. Between Bethel and Ai. How'd the story start? Faith responding, said, I'm going to build an altar right here. Faith retreating, moved into Egypt, but he said, I know the way to get back. I'm going to go back to the place of my first altar. Verse 4, to the place of the altar which he had made there at first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. What's it going to take? What's it going to take? For me, an appeal to heaven is a reconstruction of America's original altar. To me, what's going to turn the nation around. I'm praying about these primaries. I'm praying about this election, but it's actually not where I have the highest degree of focus. And I believe if that's your high degree of focus, you have a non-biblical worldview. Because if you want to be honest, can I say this? I'm going to anyway, so I guess I don't know who I'm asking. If you want to be honest, it wasn't better when your guy was in there. Abortion stayed legal. Hello. Do I want the right man? You better believe it. I'm praying and contending. I've got a gold stake I'm taking back to South Carolina. I believe we're going to see God's selection in the White House. But I believe there's a superior cure for a nation living under a curse and a plague. And it's going to be covenant men and women rising up in the earth that go reestablish their first altar. It's illegal for you to wave a flag if you won't build an altar. It's illegal for you to attend a conference, enjoy yourself, buy some product out in the lobby, and not go home and build an altar. Come on, what if Give Him 15 was about building altars? What if it was about the reestablishment of a prayer force in the earth that birthed a devotional revolution? What if we ascended the ladder of honor and devotion, inherited God's intention for us in the arena of influence, and all of a sudden the nation started turning because we saw a faith revival in the presence of initial altars? When the Lord began to give me this assignment about redeeming the land, coming in here and the Lord talking to me about redeeming the land, I said, Lord, what? This is a simple question, but it's one I've asked often. What would be the most fruitful, impactful thing I could do in an hour? Get you to go back to where you were at first when you were obsessed. Before the disappointment, before the betrayal, before you were hurt by church leadership, before the church you were a part of split, before the divorce. How far do you want to go? Before the molestation, before the abuse, before the rape, before the addiction, before the funeral? Where were you back then? I remember when He tapped me on the shoulder in the middle of the night and I didn't negotiate my way out of it. I remember, let me tell on me a little bit. I remember when I didn't buy anything at the gas station without asking the person if they knew who Jesus was. And then we got mature. Then we got some wisdom to replace our zeal. And I think the Lord is saying, Abram, I need that man again, that when I tell him to go, he goes. And when I don't tell him where he's going, he goes. And when I tell him you have to walk away from your family, he goes. And when I tell you it's going to cost you everything, he goes. And when you get there and there's a famine, he stays. And even if he stumbles off the path, he returns back between Bethel and Ai, back to the place of his first altar. One thing we've not done in this meeting is have an altar call. And I may look new school, but I am old school. And I believe something happens. I believe the father of this house was used by God to birth a revival in Pensacola that transformed the lives of people, not when they sat in a service, but when they came to an altar. I answered every altar call every time I was there, even the nights I was there to preach. I remember preaching in the Brownsville revival. That sound coming out of the earth, that came out of the earth in that building, in those outpourings, and I'm the guest speaker, and before we even get through the second song, I'm in the altar. Don't tell me that's just not what God's doing right now. He was into altars then. He's into altars now, and I believe the key to transformation in the nation is burning ones that go back to their first altar. My heart is I'd like to see every person in this room go home pregnant with the seeds of devotional revolution. Nikki, would you come? Is that all right? It's not a short joke. I'm just trying to be helpful. Whew. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Patrick. I want you to look at me just for a moment. Do you remember when you had the virus instead of the inoculation? I know this is not supposed to be this group. This is the radical ones. I think we need to go recapture that definition. Radical is not intended to be a relevant term. Radical does not mean more radical than the people down the road. It means a group of people who are the tip of the spear. It means a group of people who have inherited an authority and an arena of devotion that God releases them to be able to send decrees that transform cultures. You remember it? I remember, Dutch, I remember having to pull my car over on the side of the road at a red light because the tears wouldn't let me see Rick Curry. I remember being in a bathroom in a restaurant, me and you leaning against the wall between the urinals, and the power of God so strong we couldn't peel ourselves off the wall. I remember. Come on, can you remember a time when there was a degree of presence on your life that's not on your life right now? I'm telling you, He's putting a fire back in us to go get back what we had at our first altar. A prodigal lover. He comes running. We're tired of the edges, God. We want to live in the center. If you're watching us by live stream, build an altar right where you are. Build an altar right where you are. coming back to that place. I'm coming back to that altar. Coming back to that place where you were my obsession, not my Sunday morning. Lord. Come touch me. Some of you are going to get the manifestation back you lost. You're going to lose that dignity you thought you matured into. And the Lord's bringing you back to some early days.
Come touch me again, again.
Oh!
'Cause I am just
A prodigal. And he comes running. Lift your voice. Come on. I want him to hear you crying out for him. Lord, we want it back. God, I want that fire back. God, I want that passion back, Lord. Oh, Lord, I want those tears back. I want those dreams back. God, I want those visions back. Woo. I'm going to do it again. I hear the Lord say, I'm going to do it again. Tonight is launching something. He's going to do it again. He's going to do it again. He's going to do it again. I prophesy he's going to do it again. Come on, just let that sound come out of you tonight. No music, just let the sound come out of you crying out for him. Come on, I believe this sound's being made all over the nation through live stream right now. People are crying out, God, what if tonight is if my people? What if tonight is an if my people night? Come on, we humble ourselves. We pray. We seek your face, Lord. We turn from wicked ways. Come on, let's make an appeal to heaven tonight. Yeah, there it is. Whew. There it is. Sheila mondo boko sabababa ki andalabaka. Ke botoba rabababa sobaka. This is full circle for you. This is full circle for you. This is a complete revolution. I just heard the Lord say, your circle is a complete revolution. Come on, just begin to let that sound come out of you right now. If you're crying, let that sound come out of you. Don't fight this because you care about what other people will think. Woo. Give us this sound in every altar in America, God. Give us this sound in the churches of America. Give us this sound in every church represented in this room tonight. Come on, you're not going to leave here with nuggets. You're going to leave with fire. You're going to leave with fire.